Oftentimes, when playing through a game, you don't necessarily have time to take a closer look at the environments you're travelling through. Whether being forced to negotiate enemies or rushed through thanks to a cutscene, many places aren't on screen for long enough to appreciate them properly. Sometimes, though, it's hard not to take a break and gaze at the virtual surroundings you found yourself in, as they can be an impressive spectacle that makes getting pummeled into the dirt by pursuing monsters absolutely worth the risk. This is getting truer by the day, as better game engines and ever-increasing graphical fidelity means that games and media as a whole are capable of rendering richly detailed environments that look as good as, if not better, than real life, even if the overall game itself isn't necessarily realistic. In celebration of this, we've picked through some of the most visually impressive games out there and chosen a few that are undeniably photogenic, even though they aren't always completely photorealistic. I'm Ashton from TripleJump, and here are 10 video games with the most stunning environments. Number 10, Mirror's Edge. By environments, I'm sure you thought we meant exclusively natural places, yeah? However, an urban jungle is no less an environment than a beach, and one of the most pleasing and striking to look at is the city in Mirror's Edge. This parkour simulator is filled to the brim with mostly identical white buildings with large windows, with few distinguishing features except for a select few locations. It can make for a quite claustrophobic feeling when proceeding on missions, but take a minute to look around and off into the distance, and it starts to open up and look almost like a collection of strangely shaped clouds, keeping the citizens safe as they spend their lives under a pleasantly blue sky. As Faith runs through and over the buildings, her path is highlighted primarily but not exclusively in red, in a stark contrast to all of the white and glass that is commonplace. These pops of colour are not only a handy way to navigate, but make the world seem a little less samey than it would otherwise. True, it is all buildings, cranes, and suspiciously placed ramps, with very little nature to enjoy, but there's something quite aesthetically pleasing about the city. It's almost enough to make you forget all the dystopian stuff going on in the background. Number 9, Beyond Blue. In a similar vein to our previous entry, a stunning environment doesn't necessarily have to be something that's easily accessible in order to be impressive to look at. And in Beyond Blue, it's all about the natural beauty of the oceans, its wildlife, and its intricate ecosystems. Inspired by the documentary Blue Planet 2, this game drops players into the fins of scuba diver and deep-sea researcher Mirai, who is venturing out to collect data on various different ocean-dwelling life forms. As they explore the depths of the ocean, players will scan the many creatures they come across in order to learn more about them, and send data back to the lab. And while they do this work, they'll also be able to marvel at the beauty of the open ocean, the complex relationships between the corals, fish, and whales, to name a few, and explore an environment many of us will never get to experience ourselves. Of course, your mileage may vary with this particular title, as those who are not fans of the sea and the things that live within it will probably find it more anxiety-inducing than relaxing. If, however, you've ever wanted to be a marine biologist, Beyond Blue is a great way to explore the majesty of the ocean. Number 8, God of War Ragnarok. The God of War games have always been a bit of a spectacle, and the first of the newer titles, despite changing location rather drastically, is no exception. It's still a visual masterpiece with huge set pieces and sweeping landscapes to show off the scale of the world, Kratos, and its story quite effectively. With God of War Ragnarok, this is even more true, with the graphics and environments getting a glow up even from the impressive looking previous game. Each of the 9 realms has its own distinctive aesthetic, from the fiery Muspelheim to Asgard itself, which looks appropriately Nordic, and even the central hub at Sindri's house in the realm between realms is pleasant to look at, despite it not being all that large an area. This ensures that every place that Kratos and Boy visit are memorable and recognisable, and it makes it very hard to pass through any area without taking time to admire the scenery, no matter how urgent the task at hand may be, and makes exploring and returning to the areas more interesting to do than it would be otherwise. Really, the only thing bringing the experience down a bit is the characters feeling the need to chime in about puzzles every 3 seconds.
The statue keeps getting stuck on the wing.
But I suppose you can't have it all, can you? Number 7, Forza Horizon 5. All of the Forza Horizon games have an impressive amount of detail to them, with realistic environments that are a decent recreation of a portion of the country that they're set in, often featuring a few famous landmarks dotted across the landscapes along the way. The fifth and newest installment of the series is no exception. The newest open-world racing adventure is set in Mexico, and features a vast array of different environments to visit and tear through with any number of vehicles. There are lush, humid jungles and swamps, expansive beaches, sprawling deserts and city centres, along with a bunch of unique areas and special hidden pieces of paradise worth seeking out. All of these can become even more interesting and chaotic thanks to a dynamic weather system, which could throw torrential downpours or massive sandstorms into the mix at any moment. The biggest shame here is that despite having a photo mode, the character's never able to get all that close to any of the landscapes because they are permanently trapped in a car. And generally they're going to be flying by the views at 200 miles per hour more often than not. But take a break from knocking down fences and cactuses, and you'll see some truly beautiful sights. Number 6. Journey. A game doesn't necessarily have to have a wide range of environments to be striking, as adventure title Journey proves. There's very little in this game that isn't a shade of orange-red, as the vast majority of the game takes place in a desert, which the player is traversing in order to make their way to a huge mysterious mountain in the distance. Despite being very similar throughout, with sand making up most of the vistas that players will be seeing as they make their way forward through the land, there is still a decent amount to be discovered, with different buildings, ruins and puzzles that the player will be solving, hopefully with the help of another cloaked figure, which makes the desert a much more interesting place than just an empty expanse. The closer they get to their final destination, the more secrets the player is able to find. And though the whole of the game is accomplished without any dialogue whatsoever, the only communication is singing, it proves that there's more to the world than what they've been seeing so far. There is a good amount of scenic variety despite the limited colour palette, and the cooperative experience of the titular journey helps make the world all the more memorable. Number 5. Eastshade. Though many of the games on this list will have a dedicated photo mode of their own, none of them so far have really used their impressive environments directly as part of the gameplay. Our next title changes this, as the environments are central and even vital to the overall story. The entire point of Eastshade is finding picturesque vistas and making art out of them, as the player takes on the role of a travelling painter. They've showed up in the titular island realm and can offer their services to the anthropomorphic inhabitants while making their way to locations detailed by their mother's last wishes. While wandering around and talking to the various denizens, players are able to bring up a frame and choose a portion of the world that they want to take down on canvas. This functions like a photograph, but results in a painted recreation of the selected area instead. Though the graphics aren't the most realistic, and are almost aesthetically like a painting themselves, the various environments found around the island are still quite breathtaking, full of colour, life and natural beauty that make it hard to find a place that wouldn't make for a good painting. Number 4. Hitman 3. A lot of games have a wide variety of biomes for players to explore, but few let them travel the world in the same way the recent batch of Hitman games does, as they follow 47 on his nefarious activities around the globe, taking in some of the most varied and beautiful sights it has to offer. Whether it's the packed streets of Marrakesh, the desolate beaches of New Zealand, or the opulence of a Dubai skyscraper, Hitman 3 has the most variety out of all the recent trilogy, thanks to it technically housing a collection of all three most recent titles, providing a never-ending treat of gorgeous locations and tragic accident opportunities. The attention to detail and sheer variety of objects that can be discovered as the silent assassin makes his way around the world and in and out of high-level facilities and crowded venues makes each mission feel much more alive and engaging to interact with. Makes you wonder why 47's so tense all the time, given how luxurious his work conditions are. I mean, I know he has to constantly make sure he's not discovered, but he's also at a 5-star resort. Surely the pros outweigh the cons. Number 3. Red Dead Redemption 2. In a hyper-realistic world, like the one found in Red Dead Redemption 2, where you're expected to bathe yourself and your horse, and make sure to eat to help boost your stats, you'd expect the realism to extend to the environments as well. And guess what? It does! How lucky for us! The expansive world of the Old West is modelled in a way that makes it feel realistic and alive, with sweeping views in a variety of environments, all filled to the brim with accurate flora and fauna that can be taken or hunted and used for different tonics and foods. Though it is on a much smaller scale than the whole of the actual United States, it does do a decent job of including a wide range of environments that can be found across the south and west of the country, with Saint-Denis acting as a stand-in for New Orleans and being a visual spectacle all on its own. Just remember to never explore the swamps at night. As beautiful as the world may be in general, there are some secrets hidden in the foliage that are better left unsolved. Number 2, Ghost of Tsushima. From one historically inspired game to another now, as we cross the Pacific and find ourselves on the island of Tsushima many centuries ago. As Jin makes his way across Tsushima, which is an actual island, by the way, and attempts to drive out the Mongol invaders, he'll travel through bamboo forests, open expanses, and farmland, each just as beautiful as the last. There is, perhaps, a little less variety than what can be found in some of the other games on this list, but regardless of that, every vista that can be found is an impressive one, whether it's vast open fields of pampas grass or sheer cliffs along the shoreline. The most stunning places in the game, though, are probably the wooded areas, where a large portion of the area is full of colourful leaves drifting about the place. Some of the mythic tales also allow Jin to see different landscapes, as he tracks down legendary weapons and armour by following natural landmarks and discovers secret spots, and the DLC Iki Island gives players even more to explore and tosses in some cats and monkeys to discover to boot. Of course, the burned down villages do put a bit of a damper on things, but let's focus on the positives, shall we? And number 1, Horizon Forbidden West. The destroyed world of Horizon Zero Dawn is a marvel to look at in itself, but there's an even greater variety in the second game, Horizon Forbidden West, as Aloy travels to the eponymous area in order to continue on her mission to save the world. As she makes her way further west, she crosses a wide variety of environments and visits drastically different cities before finally making her way to the beach and the partially submerged ruins of San Francisco. It's especially interesting to see the contrast between some of the places Aloy visits and their equivalents in the real world, and makes it even better because technically you could visit the places you see in-game. The realism gets more impressive in the Burning Shores DLC, as the PS5 exclusivity meant the developers could put even more of an emphasis on graphical enhancements. Everything in this add-on is visually striking, with beautiful foliage and incredibly inviting water contrasting with the destroyed buildings of what used to be Los Angeles, and managing to make this post-apocalyptic world look like an incredibly lush place to live, despite all the infighting and robot dinosaurs. If the third game continues this trend and looks even better, I may never venture into the real world again.